What's that now? A Stephen King top 10 is upon us. It floats! Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today we're going to be doing another top 10 and this is my top 10 Stephen King movies. Now Stephen King has such a creative mind. Although I haven't read a lot of his books, I've read a few. I'm always interested in his movie or TV adaptations because there always seem to be something interesting about them, whether it's horror, non-horror. I'm interested. There are always Stephen King adaptations coming out, and there's been a ton of them out so far. Not all of them good, but there are some great movies and TV shows in there, and I've seen enough now to where I can make a top 10. However, there is still a lot I have not seen. So this is a current top 10, which might be updated in a year or two, because there are still a lot I want to get to. However, this book I have right here, which I've shown on the channel before, is a brilliant insight into the Stephen King adaptations that we've had so far. And there's some in here that have made me mark down on my Letterboxd watch list, ones that I need to watch, kind of like Needful Things, Maximum Overdrive, I believe it's called. They're still ones that I have not seen yet, but I think I've seen most of the popular ones, so I thought to come on here and give you my thoughts because I am a bit of a Stephen King movie fan. So let me know your favorite Stephen King adaptations down below in the comment, and we'll get a little bit of a discussion going. Remember, this is just my list. There is no right Stephen King top 10. This is just the ones I've seen and the ones that I think are the best, and we are starting from 10 all the way down to 1 being the best, of course. So let's just get into it now with number 10. Number 10, we have something that I watched recently for the first time. I think it was this year, and that is The Running Man. Yes, can you believe it? All my friends had seen this. Everyone was telling me I needed to watch it. And it just shows how easily this list could change because it has got into my Stephen King top 10, and I only watched it for the first time this year. So, like I said, this could all change in a year or two's time. But for now, we do have The Running Man in a 10. And this is such a cool concept of this government-controlled world or city that people just basically have to abide by the rules and stuff, and the government is watching your every move. But we have such a cool concept here regarding the prisoners that are doing jail time, basically, and how they can get out of doing their life sentence or whatever you have by taking part in this game show called The Running Man. And it's basically a game of survival. And we do see Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has been convicted, and he has been chosen by this game show host to take part because he looks the part. He looks like he's someone the crowd could get behind. And this game show host basically just says, that's my guy. And we just see Arnie sort of getting from these different locations and taking on these almost video game bosses, if you like, with such cool concept designs to them. Kind of like your favorite wrestlers from the WWE, the way they look, in a bloody soaked affair. And we just see Arnie sort of taking them on and trying to get out of his prison sentence by winning this game of The Running Man. And I just think it's this cool little concept, very futuristic at the time it was made. Could it do with a remake, maybe? That is another story, but for now, I like the way this was all put together. Arnie is at his absolute best here, with all this dialogue and one-liners. It's your typical Arnie cinematic experience, really. And I really liked the villain of this movie. Like, I love to hate the guy. His name is Killian, and he is like the slimiest character you will see in movies. He's up there with the best, and he has a secret plan for Arnie, really. He's this game show host who seems really, really nice in front of the audience and everyone loves him, but behind the scenes he is just, this really sinister character. And I couldn't wait for Arnie to kick his ass, basically. And I really loved one of the one-liners at the end of this movie where Arnie runs in to get revenge on him, sort of, and says, "It's showtime." So the real show has begun here. But yeah, not really full horror, really. It's more of a sci-fi adventure movie, this one. And Stephen King doesn't always write horror, though, does he? But I had to put The Running Man in here. I had such fun with this movie, and just your typical, fun, entertaining movie from the 80s. So number 10 is The Running Man. Number 9 is going to be maybe a surprise to some people, but I've put Gerald's Game in there. Now, I feel like this is a movie that kind of went under the radar a little bit, whether that went to because it went straight to Netflix there, maybe a factor in that, but I don't really hear too many people talk about this movie when they talk about Stephen King's best films. But for me, I had a blast with this film. It deals with the sense of isolation, which Stephen King seems to do a lot in some of his stories. There are more movies in this list that will deal with this subject matter coming up, but this is one that does it really great, like a lot of his movies do. But this basically sees this guy called Gerald and his wife Jessie, who want to spice up their sex life, and they go to this remote cottage in the middle of nowhere, and Gerald kind of ties his wife up there, and in the middle of this sex game they've got go on, Gerald has a heart attack and she is left helpless. She can't get out of the situation. She's strapped to the bed, and there is just no way that she can call for help. She can free herself. She does not know what to do, and no one even knows that she's there, basically. But Stephen King, what I like about his stories, he incorporates other elements into his tale that he's telling, really, because it doesn't stop there. It's not just about her trying to free herself. There is a supernatural element in there where someone may be lurking around this cottage or the outskirts of the cottage, and the film teases that all the way through, and it really does creep you out, and it draws to a very, very scary ending, I thought. I mean, I remember thinking that doesn't sit quite right with me, this ending. There is some really scary stuff in there that I kind of didn't expect. I kind of just thought it was this woman who had to try and get out of this thing, but no, Stephen King throws a little bit more into an already tense situation. There's some really edgy or seat stuff in here. Great performances from the two leads, and this is directed by Mike Flanagan, who is pretty big in the horror genre now. He's made things like Doctor Sleep and stuff. Oculus, which is another pretty underrated film, but I do feel like Gerald's Game is up there with some of his best stuff. I do feel like this needs to get talked about more when coming to Stephen King films, because I just thought it was an absolutely brilliant time. So I had to put Gerald's Game in there at number 9. Number 8 is going to be Pet Sematary, which famously scared Stephen King himself when he was writing the book. I think he had to stop a few times there because he was creeping himself out. But this is such a cool concept. This basically is about a cemetery that is located in this tiny little secluded neighborhood next to a massive main road, weirdly. And when you bury an animal there, or as we soon find out, a human, they kind of come back with this very vicious and sinister edge to them, as Lewis and his family soon find out in this film. They move to this new house and their cat is killed, and the cat kind of comes back, but it's this annoying little fucker who is just horrible, and it's not the same type of cat, and the movie only escalates from there when it becomes about humans being buried into this cemetery, really. Now, I really do think this movie has some very dark moments in it, including the death of a miner. And we also have this sick woman called Zelda who keeps... The main actress in this movie, she keeps the main female lead, she keeps having these flashbacks of her sick sister, and she's kind of played by this man, really, and it all just looks so creepy and scary, and them scenes always just freak me out. It's quite a scary movie in places, but we also have a great neighborhood friend here. One of my favorite Stephen King characters in Judd Crandall, played by Greg Gwynn. He's just this really cool guy who befriends this family there, and he's just a nice guy and someone else you can get behind in this movie. And I love the way he says, "You stay away from that road. That's a very dangerous road."
Judd Crandall. I live just across the road. You want to watch out for that road.
We also have I like the way the movie deals with the sense of trying to get over grief and why it's more important, even though how much it hurts, to leave things in the past that are dead and gone and try and move on with our lives instead of trying to bring the past up. I think it plays with that storyline and that concept brilliantly. So Pet Sematary is one that gets better with every viewing for me, and I had to have it in here. So number 8 is Pet Sematary. Number 7 is going to be the 1990 miniseries It. Yes, I've cheated a little bit here. I do apologise for that, everyone. But when you watch this little 2-part miniseries, as a whole, it just does become one big movie, doesn't it? And this is one of my favourite films / miniseries of all time, really. I used to constantly rewatch this as a kid, despite its 3-hour and a little bit runtime there. It just brings back so many memories for you. I still revisit it to this day. But the 2 big main reasons why I've put this over the remake, which I don't mind, I just prefer this, are 1, the nostalgia, like I just mentioned there, and 2, Tim Curry's portrayal of Pennywise. Now, Bill Skarsgård done an okay job there. I think, in fact, he done a pretty decent job. But Tim Curry kind of made this horror icon and made the character his own, and it was always going to be a lot to live up to for Bill Skarsgård, but he just falls into this clown suit and becomes this monstrous being, really.
Kiss me, fat boy!
And this is about a monstrous being, or this entity if you like, coming down and wreaking havoc on the town of Derry and striking fear into the youngsters that live there. This film, for the first half, shows our main characters from the Losers Club, as they're called in this movie, and each of their dealings with Pennywise, and you all get a fair little slice of the story there. But each one is so interesting in its own way, and how Pennywise plays on each one of their different fears, if you like. The second half of the movie does get a bad rep, but the more I watch it, the more I've grown to really like it. Apart from the ending, that giant spider is ridiculous, and even director Tommy Lee Wallace has gone on record to say that, even though it kind of wasn't his fault. So, you know, I do feel like he was unfairly given that ending there. But there are some creepy moments in the second half, and some of the movies / miniseries best moments, like when Beverly Marsh goes back to her house and that creepy old woman is there. You know, that something like that done it better than the remake, in my opinion, because when they had that big CGI mess in the remake, this is way more creepier for me in this version. I just have a lot of love for this movie. It's one of my most watched movies of all time, and I just really do love it. I mean, it's one of Stephen King's most famous adaptations, and I had to put it in this list at number 7. It would have been higher if I was going off favoritism, but for overall brilliant experiences, the ones below are just a little bit better there. But Stephen King's It has to be in my top 10. So that was number 7. Number 6 is going to be Christine. In my opinion, one of John Carpenter's best movies. Like, it might even be top 3 for me. And this basically sees this red Plymouth Fury control this young boy and kind of take over his whole personality. Now, Arnie, who the movie centers around, is basically this young nerd. He's not really liked by anyone in school, and he gets this new car. And as this car sort of becomes alive, if you like, we sort of see how Arnie changes over the course of the movie, and sinister things, death, murder starts to happen around Arnie, and he just gets more cocky as the movie goes on. And I think the movie really constructs that so well, but not just Arnie when he's becoming this unlikable arsehole really towards the end of the movie. The car is also changing as well. It starts to be, change its appearance slightly. It starts to gleam red and just becomes this badass car really. So as everyone starts to dislike Arnie a lot more, this Plymouth Fury seems to be getting stronger. And I just think it works them 2 little storylines in there and that dynamic so well. John Carpenter put it together brilliantly here. But basically Arnie is just like, yeah, like I said, this little nerd at the start of the movie, and he becomes the total opposite of what a high schooler is, to being this ultimate greaser, really. And it's just kind of a sad tale to see him morph into this person that nobody likes, really. But this movie is just absolutely so well directed. It's got John Carpenter's awesome score in there. One of my favorite John Carpenter scores. He always just plays that simple little tune, doesn't he, in his movies? One moment where this car is chasing this guy down this alleyway and the music's on, that's one of my favorite scenes in the entire film. This one really, really surprised me when I watched it for the first time a couple of years ago, and has now laid its place in my top 10 Stephen King movies. So number 6 is Christine. Number 5 is going to be The Shawshank Redemption. Now, some of Stephen King's stronger adaptations aren't even horror at times. As we see in this movie, it's just about a guy going to prison. And that just shows you how versatile Stephen King's creative mind is. The man is a complete genius. End of story. But this is actually, right now, claimed as the #1 movie on IMDb. Yes, it's claimed by many movie lovers to be the greatest film ever made. I don't quite share that opinion, but it's high on this list, and it will be probably in the top 100 movies I've ever seen. But I can see why people think that this is such a great film and why it's one of the best. This didn't do too well at the box office, but I think what captured audiences and why it's gained this following and become this big movie and #1 on IMDb is because of the heart this movie has. It basically follows this guy called Andy Dufresne, who has been so wrongly done by and put in jail, and he is just an innocent man, basically. And the movie from the off gets you invested in him. You get behind this guy and you want him to have better than what he's got. And you just know he doesn't deserve to be in prison, basically. So straight from the off, we're invested. And the more Andy runs down his life sentence that he's got here, instead of drawing closer to getting out, it all just seems to get further away from him. It seems quite impossible to get out of this prison called Shawshank. We've got so many great characters in here, so many grim ones, like corrupt, wardens, to vile prison guards, to the inmates, but we also got a lot of great characters in here as well, like the people who befriend Andy Dufresne, and we got Red there, played by Morgan Freeman, and this is where the movie really does light up, with Andy and Red becoming best friends in the prison. And it's just the heart this movie has is shared with these two characters, really.
Get busy living, you get busy dying.
It's a blossoming friendship that continues to grow throughout the years that Andy has in this prison. And we really want this guy to escape. You really do get behind him and the character of Red. We want the both of them to get out and go on to better things and get a better life. And it just seems so hard to get out. But this film is a brilliant prison tale. It really is. And Frank Darabont just directs it masterfully. He incorporated this movie to be told in such a great way. It's just got everything a heartwarming drama should have, really, and it had to be in this list. I just want to give a quick mention to that old guy there. I feel so bad for him when he spent his whole life in the Shawshank prison, and when he finally gets out, he doesn't kind of know what to do with himself, and he gets this job in the supermarket. And I always feel so bad for him when he's always getting told off, and he's writing to his friend in Shawshank, and he says, "I don't think the store manager likes me very much." I just feel so bad for the guy. But yeah, Shawshank Redemption. I'm sure you've all seen that movie, but if you haven't, this is a movie that you should absolutely see, and it should be viewed by every film lover. So number 5 is The Shawshank Redemption. Number 4 is going to be The Shining. Yes, we all know Stephen King did not like this version of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, but I think the general feeling amongst the horror community, horror fans, is that this is a bloody good film. And to me, it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made, basically. You've got this concept of this guy and his family who have to go and watch over this cursed hotel for 5 months during the off season. And it kind of, when I think about it, now I just mentioned Christina, where the car is sort of taking over Arnie in his personality. I feel like that is kind of the same here with Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, and how the hotel is taking over his mind the longer he stays there. And this is a film that genuinely terrified me as a kid. It was one of the very first horror movies I watched. I don't know what my dad was thinking, let me watch this above a lot of other things. But it's a, this is a proper horror film now, isn't it? It's horror at its best, basically. And this has so many moments that terrify me, like Room 237 with that old lady in the bathtub and stuff. The visions young Danny has of these twins that were murdered in the hotel years before. The blood coming down the elevator. And then most of the time when I'm getting creeped out in the film, it just goes blank and says Tuesday. And I'm like, someone turn the lights on. But I really like the way Stephen King incorporates more into the story. It's not just about the haunted hotel. We've got people with this shining ability, like Jack Torrance's young son, who can talk to the hotel caretaker, just reading his mind there. Stephen King doesn't stop there. He incorporates other things into it. Like I said with Gerald's Game, it's not just an isolated event. There's some supernatural shit going on. This isn't just a haunted hotel. There's this people with shining ability in there as well. I really like the way he throws more things in there. That usual storygoers would just play on one thing. Stephen King goes for it with even more dynamic storylines. And the portrayal of Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, is masterful in my opinion. Seeing this guy lose his mind and just eventually trying to kill his family is quite terrifying. We all know that. Here's Johnny scene, one of the most iconic horror movie moments in history.
Here's Johnny.
I just think this film is fantastic, and the Overlook Hotel is such a iconic and sinister horror location. This film, sorry Stephen King, if you're watching, is directed masterfully by Stanley Kubrick. It really is. The haunting score, the way he points the camera, it all just works and comes together to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made, in my opinion. I still need to check out the Shining TV series, which I plan on doing after watching the Stephen King on Screen documentary, and that is more of a honest way of telling the Stephen King story. So I'll have to get on that. I've heard it's not very good, but I've heard other people tell me that it is good. So when I get to that, I'll probably review it on this channel. But for now, number 4 is The Shining. Number 3 is going to be Stand By Me. Again, like The Shawshank, this is a movie that fills you with joy, captures your heart, and it's all about friendship. Again, Stephen King, not really doing horror, just showing how great of a writer he is. And this follows 4 friends who go on a journey to find a dead body that this whole town is looking for, and they know where he is, so they want to go and get him, bring him back, and become heroes and get their name in the paper and on the radio, kind of like how 11, 12-year-old minds would think. And we just follow them on this journey that is just such a fun time. We hear them talking about shit that they think matters, like who'd win in a fight between Superman and Mighty Mouse, I believe, or just what would they have if they could have one food for the rest of their life? Things that they think are important. But we also hear some really close to the heart stuff between the friends and how they're coming of age, really, because that's what this is. It's a coming of age drama, and it's all about growing up and stuff. But some of the highlights of this movie are the stumbling blocks that these kids sort of come across here, like Milo the Junkman, who sicks his dog on them and chases them out the junkyard that they're trespassing on. We've got a part where they're walking across a bridge and this train is coming because they're following the train tracks and they've got to run across the bridge. And we've got this bully called Ace, played brilliantly by Kiefer Sutherland, on their tail. Like I said, it's just a really good coming-of-age drama, but what really captures you is the characters here, played by Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, and Jerry O'Connell, who I've got to say is my favourite out the bunch. He's just this little scaredy cat called Vern, who's just terrified of everything and brings out the movie's best comedic moments there. You know, they're just characters you really get behind and care about, and you actually, as the movie goes on, hope that they make it in life when they become young adults, basically. One of my favourite moments in the movie, I've just got to give a shout out to this, is where we just take this like 5-minute break, because Will Wheaton's character is a storyteller, and they're all sitting by the campfire, and he tells this story about Lardass and how he gets some revenge. And I like the way the movie just cuts away for 5 minutes there. It's not really that important to the film, but it just gives the viewer a little bit of fun for 5 minutes and follows this little side story. I love that part. You know, it's one of the best parts of the movie for me. But overall, this is such a rewatchable, brilliant time. Rob Reiner squeezed every ounce he could out of these young kids and got so many great performances out of them. Like, just one of the best films ever made, in my opinion. So number 3 is Stand By Me. Number 2 is going to be Misery, another film that I only watched for the first time a couple of years ago. And this is another movie that deals with the concept of isolation. But not only that, Stephen King does like to write about writers, doesn't he? And we see himself in some of the characters. We've got Jack Torrance from The Shining, and this time we've got James Caan in the main role of this male character who is in this terrible car crash, and this woman, played by Kathy Bates, Annie Wilkes her name is, sort of saves him from the wreckage, brings him to her house, and actually claims to be his biggest fan. It's like a dream come true that he's staying in the house with her. He can't really walk, so she's just, you know, sort of tethering to his needs and telling him that there's this big storm outside, you can't really go anywhere. But really, she has just got him hostage in the house, and she really doesn't want him to leave until he finishes his latest book. As the movie goes on, you just find out more and more how sinister this character is who's got him captured in this house. We all know about the woodchuck scene where she wants to keep him there for even longer. I winced at that scene. But one that really caught my attention is where Annie Wilkes gives him some soup. He spills a little bit and she just loses her mind. And I just sat back and went, holy shit, this woman is a fucking psychopath. And I really feared for James Caan's character.
Here's one big bastard of a check. Give me some of your Christing money. There, look there. See what you made me do.
I think I spent the entire second half of the movie on the edge of my seat praying that he got away from this. I really wanted them to escape this really psychotic woman. But Kathy Bates is absolutely fantastic in the role, giving Annie Wilkes one of the most iconic horror movie villains. It's no wonder that she won an Oscar for this movie, because she fully deserved it. And I've just got to say, man, this is another Rob Reiner classic. Right next to Stand By Me there, I've got him in second place with Misery. Man, what a run he had there for about 4 movies. Excellently directed. But this film is fantastic, and it might just be a 10 out of 10. I've only seen it once, but I'm going to rewatch it just to confirm that. When I do rewatch it, I will review it on this channel. It's a movie I really want to review. So, an absolutely brilliant movie that I can't really find any faults with. When I watched it, I think I just thought to myself, there were no negatives with that movie. It was just all so well put together. So number 2 is Misery. Number 1, though, is going to be The Green Mile. Another movie directed by Frank Darabont in a prison. Man, just give this guy another prison movie to do. In fact, just give him another movie. He's hardly made any, but he made 2 absolutely brilliant movies in this list, and 2 of the best movies ever made. But The Green Mile, I know a lot of people say The Shawshank is the best prison movie. The Green Mile, for me, surpasses it, even though it's got a little bit of a supernatural twist in there, unlike The Shawshank did. Now, this basically sees Tom Hanks as a prison guard who works on the death row wing in 1933, I believe it is. And he basically is just there to make sure everything runs smoothly. And this new prisoner, played by Michael Clark Duncan, called John Coffey, this gigantic man, is the next person to be transferred to this wing where Tom Hanks' character Paul works. And as the movie goes on and he talks more to John Coffey, he sort of befriends him and believes that he is not guilty of the crime that was said he committed. And he's kind of at a crossroads. He's at a dilemma because he's befriended this guy and he also thinks he's innocent, and he can't really go ahead or feel like he can go ahead with what he's got to do to this man. And the more we see this friendship blossom, the more we realize that John Coffey has a bit of a miracle side to him. I'm not going to say anything if you haven't seen the movie, but that is where the supernatural element sort of comes into play here. This film has great characters as well, not just Paul and John Coffey, but the prison guards who sort of help Paul with the proceedings. You know, we've got great prisoner characters like Ed by Delacroix and Mr. Jangles, the mouse, of course. We can't forget him. And we've also got one of the vilest characters in movie history in here. A lot of people would say, if I said who's the vilest like side character over on social media or something there, a lot of people, I think, would say this guy in Percy. He's just this guy, prison guard you absolutely hate. Such a slime ball in this film. But it just adds to how great the movie is. There's always something around every corner happening in this small prison. You know, for me, this is an absolute masterpiece in filmmaking. If I'd done a top 11 movies of all time, this would be 11th. It just doesn't get into my top 10, but I still consider it a 10 out of 10 movie. Very emotional story, brilliant score, fantastic storytelling. And it's actually 3 hours long. And honestly, ask anyone who's seen it, it feels like a 90-minute movie. It absolutely flies by. You are glued to the screen. It's just excellence in movie making, in my opinion. I had to have this at number one. Just one of the greatest films ever made. That is The Green Mile. Okay guys, hope you all enjoyed this video. What are some of your favourite Stephen King movies? Leave them down below. Adaptations even, you want to go with series? I did. I picked it. If you want to leave your comments down below, it would be great to get a discussion going. Is there any Stephen King movies that you recommend I see? I do have a Stephen King ranking on Letterboxd, so I'll leave my Letterboxd down below along with my Stephen King movie review playlist. There's only one movie on there at this moment in time, but I'm going to be adding a lot more to that. I want to review more Stephen King movies on this channel, the more, you know, whether they're first time watchers, whether they're rewatchers, so look out for them. Thanks so much. If this is your type of thing or you love horror in general, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It would really help me out. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you all on the next video.